Hi, hello friends. Welcome back to Night Court Narrative. I am Elvish. I hope you're doing very well. Um, Small disclaimer, I might sound off today. I had an incredibly rough day at work and yeah, so yeah, which I can always go into detail about that later. But let's go ahead and getting on. I am discussing We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clywer, Marcus something of the Marcuses. Super quick summary. We have Eve and her girlfriend Charlie. I'm not gonna lie to you, it did take me until halfway through the book to realize that Charlie was in fact the girlfriend. I thought Charlie was her husband. I did the audiobook version, and every time the narrator even spoke in Charlie's perspective, we had the deeper voice, the rougher, more like grunty style, and I really thought Charlie was her husband. And it was halfway through the book we kept getting she, and I was like, why do they keep like misspeaking? Like, what is this? And then it dawned on me that Eve has a girlfriend. So yeah, it was a dumb moment for me. But anyway, as mentioned, we have Eve and her girlfriend Charlie. They moved into a remote house in the Pacific Northwest with their dog Shiloh. We love Shiloh. Eve does struggle with paranoia, which we now have a name for, which is Mo. This is based off of her childhood monkey with symbols toy. A strange family does arrive claiming history of the house, so like they used to live there. Eve does allow them to stay in the house and look around and reminisce about like past whatevers when a storm blocks them, obviously like a little blizzard, I guess. Their presence does grow like increasingly unsettling. Thomas is hinting at demons. This is the father, alternate realities, and also his sister Allison, who once lived in the house and was institutionalized after stabbing him. We also have, I believe Jenny was her name. He does have 3 children. Jenny likes to be a demon child and run away, hide, disappear, all of that good shit. Throughout this time, Eve is experiencing terrifying visions. We have ghostly figures, shifting timelines, warnings that the family will never leave. We even have mentions that the family might not be what they appear on the outside, which is kind of interesting. She does seek help from a neighbor, Heather, who reveals that the family's disturbing past and Allison's violent history. Eve does discover strange records and photographs suggesting that Allison might still be tied to the house and that her own identity is unstable. Tensions obviously escalate when Eve suspects Thomas of manipulating reality itself, and she begins to doubt Charlie's authenticity after mysterious calls suggests Charlie that she's the imposter, which, okay, that kind of sounds weird, but like Eve at some point was with Charlie, and Mo, mind you, like I said, Mo is a voice inside of Eve's head that is represented by an old childhood monkey with symbols. So Mo ends up telling Eve like, hey, this is not the real Charlie. So she ends up looking at Charlie's hand, and Charlie doesn't have the tattoo that they got when they were together, or like doesn't have their matching tattoo, whatever. I don't fucking know. So she ends up getting a phone call, and it's Charlie on the phone wondering where she is. Spooky. Continuing, I'm almost done, but continuing, her paranoia deepens. She does uncover evidence that contradicts her memory, such as photos labeled with Charlotte instead of Charlie. Encounters with Allison's ghost blur the line between reality and hallucination. I did get a little bit confused during this section of the book, so please forgive possible misspeakings. Thomas manipulates Eve into believing that she is his sister, Emma, who suffered from mental illness. Um, Eve does eventually lash out. Wow. Oh my god. I forgot how to breathe there for a second. I ran out of breath while I was like speaking. Who else do you know does that? Because fuck me. Let me breathe. Eve does lash out, ends up killing Thomas's wife, and obviously fights Thomas. Police intervene, but instead of saving her, they arrest her. We now find out that supposedly Eve is actually Emma. She never lived there with Charlie. Charlie is actually apparently Charlotte, and Charlotte and Eve, or I guess Emma, broke up years ago for no reason. Eve's parents don't know her. Eve's friends don't know her. All of that good shit. Like, nobody knows who she is, and all records point that Eve never existed. She was actually Emma the entire time. Now, obviously, Emma, aka Eve, is now institutionalized. Eve spent her days researching paranormal explanations online, trying to do everything she can to find any breadcrumb to really latch onto. Yeah, Thomas does end up bringing Charlie's locket with Eve's photo, and we do see a little snippet. The very last snippet is Charlie going on a website of sorts, trying to find Eve, saying that she just magically disappeared. So we know that Eve actually isn't Emma, but we don't know what's going on. And in credits. First and foremost, what the fuck did I read? And like, typically when I say that specific phrase, the book was horrible. Absolutely not. This book was so intriguing. The writing style was so catchy, and it definitely felt like I don't want to say Frida McFadden, because, like, you know, she has her very own distinct writing style, but it felt very similar to, like, older Frida McFadden, where the author definitely knew how to hook you and reel you in and keep you entertained the entire time. I didn't find myself getting bored. Typically, thrillers kind of bore me in the middle because there's not much going on. This book did, however, slow down a little bit, because I think there was a lot going on with the family in her house that kind of just confused me. So I don't necessarily think the book slowed down because it was bad. I think it slowed down because my comprehension of the book kind of lessened. So I am still pretty confused on why. I'm pretty confused on how they ended up completely erasing Eve from existence. Charlie mentioned that within seconds, every text message, every email, every photo, every anything of them completely just vanished completely. So there's no record of Eve ever existing. So I am very curious on how that happened. They did talk a lot about Mandela effects in this book as well, so I am wondering if we're kind of talking about another dimension, like maybe two dimensions got crossed and Eve unfortunately got sucked into it, and in this second dimension we have Eve as Emma with Charlotte broken up, obviously, all that. And then in our dimension we have Eve with Charlie, Shiloh, this family randomly appears. But I am very curious on where the line crosses, because it didn't matter which quote unquote dimension we are in. Thomas is the same across the board. And I know Thomas did have some moments where he was kind of weird. He was like all straight face, basically looking at the ground, not hearing things, and he was kind of acting possessed, if you will. But he never once showed difference between the Eve world and the Emma world, so I am very curious about that. However, with Thomas trying to get Ginny, I believe, his daughter, to come out of hiding, he always does a dut, 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 like, you know, the knocking. And I'm now wondering if that knocking was kind of like a portal to the other world, you know, and he was just like going back and forth. God, I sound fucking delusional right now, but I love it. So, you know, the book obviously left me with a bunch of questions, and maybe I just didn't comprehend it enough. Maybe all of these questions were answered, but I am smooth brain. I have no lumps or ridges on my brain. So maybe I'm just stupid, but I don't see how any of these were answered because I definitely didn't get any of that. But that is okay. That is okay. It's definitely a book that keeps you talking, especially after its ending, and it's a book that kind of sparks conversation. So I really did appreciate that. I did like the spookiness of the book. The thriller aspect was pretty good. It wasn't too haunting or too jarring. There were moments where I was like, okay, like, you know, we have a shadow figure with pale skin, like deformed faces. I do think that that could have been set up a little bit better, because when that happened, I was like, ooh, okay, like this is spooky, but it wasn't like a, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like it was like an, okay. So it wasn't bad, but I just feel like the execution was kind of off on some of the spookiness. But overall, I really, really do think this was a very fantastic book. The ending, I did not expect the ending. When the ending happened, well, I guess the pre-ending happened, and we find out that Eve is Emma, I'm like, okay, the book can't end here. Like, I'm confused. I don't understand. It's not really explaining anything. And then the last, like, page of the book, it says, and my girlfriend just vanished, and I'm looking for her, and no one knows she exists. And I'm just like, what the fuck? It made me so emotional. I actually, like, wholeheartedly got emotional. I was like, what did I just read? Like, that was the biggest plot twist ever that I surprisingly did not see coming. So I really, really enjoyed that. I want to say, like, the imagery in this book was pretty good as well. I did really like the way that everything was described. As I did mention, though, the execution on certain things didn't really completely match. It kind of fell through in a way, but the imagery with the description held its own, if that makes sense. So even though the execution wasn't fully there, the imagery and the description behind it made it enough, so it didn't necessarily take away from the book. It just added on to the experience, but you didn't really have the execution to give you that wow factor. Does that make sense? So, like, the book wasn't ruined at any point in time. It was just very much like, okay, cool, ooh, you know, but never like a, oh my god, like, you know, like how some books make you like completely start sweating. I didn't get that. This was just a nice ride, but spooky, you know. I did also expect the daughter to have a little bit more in the a little bit more to do with the plot. Unfortunately, she was kind of a ploy at the very beginning. The author did a really good job at making you think that the daughter was the main focus in this book when it actually wasn't. So props there. But I do wish we kind of got a little bit more creepiness there, because it kind of didn't match where the whole beginning of the book was, where's Ginny? We need her. She does this all the time. We're just used to it because this happens all the time. And then the rest of the book, it never happens again. And I understand the book is only maybe like 2-3 days worth, but if it does happen, quote unquote, all the time, then I really feel like another case would have happened throughout the book, and it didn't. So I kind of feel like that was a little bit misleading and like misconstrued throughout the book. But no, I really liked it. I actually really, really enjoyed this book. The part that I'm very confused about is my rating. I don't necessarily know what I want to rate this book between a 4 and a 4.5. I don't think it's necessarily 5-star worthy in my personal opinion. And the only reason for that, and I know I say it all the time, but most people are aware that I have this fake invisible checklist and you have to check all the boxes to get a 5-star. The only one it didn't check is like the information box. I do feel like I am a little bit confused coming out of it, but I also wonder if that was the point of the book, to confuse you and then to throw a curveball at you right at the end and be like, whoa, okay, now like, what the fuck did I just read? So that's kind of where I'm confused by. But hello? Let me see. I do also think that I really did like The Neighbor, by the way. The Neighbor was fantastic. The Neighbor was actually pretty amazing as far as the characters go and all of that. Also, I know I mention it every video, but the characters had every distinct personality. They were completely different from one another, so I did really appreciate that as well. It gave you a very dynamic relationship, obviously, with the family and then with the I guess secondary family, Charlie and Eve, because Eve got frustrated at them, and I mean absolutely frustrated at them. And it was really cool seeing the dumbfounded, I have no idea what's happening attitude mixed with the Starkey kind of cunty attitude from Paige, which is Thomas's wife. And then you have like the bratty, angsty teenage attitudes going on from his two kids, and then you have the frustration of the get the fuck out of my house already attitude from Eve, and then kind of the nonchalant, kind of brushing everything off attitude from Charlie. So you really did get a different personality and a massive dynamic change depending on who was speaking at what point, and it definitely changed the vibe and the feel of the book at like whichever time, and I did appreciate that. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I really did appreciate that. I want to say, oh, ooh, oh, okay. I'm going to sit there. I'm gonna sit here and say 4.5. It's very rare that I don't already have a rating in mind. I'm going to say 4.5 because I really do think everything that this book was meant to do did it, except for the terrifying aspect. Because every time I would read a review about this book or would read like anything about this book, everyone would always talk about how it scared them, and I didn't get that scared of vibe. I did get a thrilling, suspenseful vibe, but not necessarily scared. So I am walking away from this book changed, and I do really appreciate the ending and everything that the author did in this book. I don't necessarily think this is the biggest, spookiest book out there, so I don't think it's 1000% life-changing. But I will say 4.5. I do, however, think this is a very, very unique story. I don't think I've ever read anything similar to this, and I've read a lot of books. Well, I haven't read a lot of books. I lied to you. I've read a lot of books this year, but not in general. So because I think this year I'm at almost 140 books. I'm like 100 books behind because losing a co-host does something, it fucks with the schedule. But no, I haven't. Out of all the thrillers that I've read this year, I've never read one that's similar to this, so I do appreciate that. So I think a solid 4.5 does well, and truly I do recommend this book. I thought it was good. I actually thought everything was very well done. Execution needs work, but other than that, everything was good. I really liked it. I enjoyed the ride that it gave me. But yes, that is all I have for y'all today. I hope everyone has a fantastic day. And as always, get some water, get some snacks. If you don't already have it, like literally, you should have popcorn while you watch my podcast because that just sounds so cozy. But yeah, I hope you'll have a very wonderful day. Bye.